The Nigerian government is deepening ties with Brazil through the recent visit of President Bola Tinubu to the country, a move which was sealed with several memoranda of understanding that prepares ground for the expansion of a $2.1 billion trade volume. At the just concluded visit, President Tinubu signed 5 new sets of MOUs, which signaled renewed efforts towards strengthening historic ties and trade relations between both countries. Report shows that President Tinubu's latest visit to the South American country was the 3rd since he assumed office on May 29, 2023. Now, to further consolidate the straight ties, President Bola Tinubu participated in a string of bilateral talks and sealed 5 MOUs with his Brazilian counterpart, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Now, the 2-day state visit, which started on Monday, August 25, saw both leaders witness the inking of 5 MOUs to strengthen the Nigerian-Brazil bonds. The new deals cover a range of sectors, including trade, diplomacy, science, aviation, and finance. From country to country, I think we should take that conversation from there. From Japan for a conference, to Brazil to sign series of MOUs. How does it come to you with that bold move, being Nigeria's #1 marketing officer? What do you make of it?
And just attending conferences and signing MOUs. But this particular one that we did last week really stood out because we saw that on the back of some of the things that they discussed across the different sectors or as a product of this visit, we have started to see news flows with regards to how things are going or things have started to pick up. So it's like a positive move in the right direction, and these are things that we expect. Beyond just talking, we should start seeing the doing, we should start seeing the actions, really playing out across all these discussions that are happening at the government level. So we need to see the actions play out. We need to see them implement these policies that they have discussed. And some of the key things that they even mentioned during the visit across the sectors, we have the likes of the oil and gas reforms. We have some imminent return of Petrobras, which is like the NMPT of Brazil, if I may call it so, since it's a state-owned company. They were once here. They started operations in Nigeria, I think, in 1998, and they left about 5 years ago. So things have even changed in the sector. We have the introduction of the Industry Act, that's the PIA, that has been put in place to ensure that the activities of that sector are well monitored and separated in terms of the regulatory bodies involved, and just giving transparency around that sector. So things have changed from what they used to know it as, and if they are planning to return, I think it is a step in the right direction, and we should be looking to leverage on some of these things that are going to materialize. We also have the bilateral air services agreement. That's the part that we also agreed on, just to enable tourism, just speaking to the aviation talks that they had during the meeting. And we had that on the back of that, one of our air carriers also announced that they'll be flying directly from Nigeria to Sao Paulo. So those are policies that I believe that if they are implemented in a very disciplined way, we should see some changes across sectors. If I even want to dive into other sectors that we discussed, we have the finance as well, where we had the central bank governor also discussing with his counterparts in Brazil on how they can transform different things around mobile money, around fintech, around just the finance landscape generally to enhance the remittance flows that we get. So all these is speaking to some of the things that look like they were productive talks that were had or were discussed during the last week's visit of the president. And I believe that if they stick to some of these agreements, if they are disciplined about the implementation of these agreements, we should see some changes across sectors. And besides that, we also had the Japan leg of it, where they discussed some industry investments as well, and how they intend to, come and support in terms of mining operations. And that would sort of improve the industrial sector as a whole, because that's where we have mining operations under. And if we can do beyond just talking and transferring technology, transferring knowledge across these two countries, then we should see some improvement across the sectors. I believe that all these talks that we had sound, like they are very productive, but there's a lot going on up that we need to have it trickle down to, the broader economy as a whole, so that we can see the full transformation that we are calling for, and his marketing strides as the president, is really upheld in such a way that we can see what his talks have translated to.
Interesting stuff. You touched on a series of initiatives, agreements, discussions, collaborations expected, of course, following these meetings. The capital market is also one aspect that was focused on to drive Nigeria-Brazil trade ties. The NGX was talking about that. I think they had some meetings. So 2 in 1. I'm looking at the strength of agriculture or Brazil in the agricultural space. I think they do a lot around that space and how that can impact us in knowledge transfer and all of that. What do you think we can maybe positively unearth from that space? And also with regards to our central bank and Brazil Central Bank exploring remittance and fintech opportunities?
So really, it's like an array of discussion that we had. And if I pick it up from the agri question that you asked, there was one statement that the president actually made during this visit, and what he mentioned was that some years back we were somewhat at the same level with Brazil, but now things have changed drastically for them, and there are things that the country, Nigeria, can actually learn from Brazil. We're talking about the advancements in terms of agriculture, in terms of mechanized farming, in terms of, having an all-year-round planting season and how it has benefited them. In fact, if we look at the global ranking, Brazil is among the top countries that are producers just by volume alone across series of agricultural products. So indeed, if that talk would, birth some level of investment in our agricultural space, that sluggish growth that we continue to see in the agricultural sector should change. I mean, Nigeria is a country that we have, in fact, in the 1960s, we were priding ourselves, as being a very high or big on agriculture, and if we can bring back that and not necessarily rely on what we later on discovered as a country, which is crude oil now, we would have a diversified country, we have a diversified pot or factors that contributes to the entire growth. So we have agri bringing its foot forward, we have industry bringing its foot forward, and we have services bringing its foot forward. So there should be that transfer of knowledge, that transfer of technology, especially in the agricultural space, on areas that we can improve on and transform the agricultural sector should be leveraged on through these particular agreements that have been reached between the two countries. Now, if we move on to capital markets, we all know that there are a lot of things that cannot function without a very strong capital market landscape. And even just speaking to having the two leaders, as NGX as well as SEC, have discussions with their counterparts during the visit, we had them talk around enhancing their support for SMEs and beyond just the large companies alone, because as we know, bulk of the contribution to growth of the economy is really on the part of SMEs, and that was where the NGX board was mentioning things around having a particular board where they allow for less stricter requirements for listing for companies that fall under that category. And these are some of the initiatives that we believe they are really, put in place and implemented with the discipline, we should see some transformation along those lines. It's not something that, of course, would happen overnight. It's something that we believe with continuous monitoring, with continuous discipline around how it is implemented, then we should see some transformation. And I believe that if all these sectors that we have mentioned or they have discussed and we've had them come together in terms of rubbing minds and exchanging the know-how, then we should see some transformation as expected.
Now, when we expect deals like this ones to be put forward, we expect it to start to trickle in, impact Nigeria, signing finance deals and all of that, and agricultural sector. We also have to make our environment very conducive and be ready to receive this investment. We have agencies, ministries, and of course, departments of government who also have a role to play here. In your assessment, do you think that all of the value chain is really ready to welcome in business as expected at this time? Because that issue I discussed sometime last week with members of the private sector, talking about some working at cross purposes. How do we align our thoughts so that we are all on the same page? When Mr. President is working to bring in this investment, there are no stumbling blocks in any aspect of the value chain.
I mean, you're right, as you put it, because in as much as we are encouraging the participation or the inflows from these other countries, we should make sure that the ground is set and ready to receive their input. And if we're talking about the ground being set and ready to receive their input, we should be looking at things around infrastructure, we should be looking at things around power, and most importantly, we should be looking at things around insecurity. So these are areas that truly the president would have to make sure that in as much as he is out there making the right moves in terms of encouraging foreign flows, in terms of encouraging direct investment, in terms of encouraging or putting the good standing debt in that sector. And we also expect that other areas around ensuring adequate infrastructure and addressing the issue of insecurity are things that would, put it in the minds of these potential investors that would come or even return to really come back and set it up. So those are areas that I believe that we can see them or we should expect them to, address if they want this particular return of investors or even new investors coming into the country. It is still a problem, but I believe that we are taking some necessary steps, and we just want to see them taking up those steps and, be disciplined about implementing the things that will turn around these issues and, bring the positive out of everything at the end of the day.
All right, now, before I let you go, a bit of stability in the foreign exchange market, which is also something that drives investments, because when there is predictability in that market, investors always want to come into that country. We've seen some stability, that disparity between the official rates and, of course, the other market in recent times. What would you ascribe this to? Do you think this is sustainable as we get into the latter part of the year?
So I think I would ascribe it to the fact that we have a high interest rate environment currently, and we have seen foreign portfolio inflows, just improve over the first quarter, at least based on the most recent data published by the National Bureau of Statistics. We saw that foreign portfolio investments were as high as over $5 billion, and that just speaks to the fact that they are encouraged or attracted by the high interest rate environment that we have currently. Now, in the short term, we should expect some level of stability. In fact, all through this year, on a year-to-date basis, we've seen the currency actually appreciate by 0.35%. And that just speaks to the efforts that they have put in place in terms of encouraging inflows, in terms of managing the exchange rate according to what they have done so far. And that is positive, because it's not just positive for the country alone, even positive for the companies that are in the country. We've seen companies, return to profit because they are coming from all the losses that they booked last year. And these are things that bode well in terms of their performance. And if we have this stability over the next, at least in the short to medium term, we should see more companies, even from outside, be encouraged to come and set up their businesses here, or even have some of them return if they happen to fall under the category of those that were initially there and left. And these are things that would definitely encourage them to come back. But again, do we expect it to continue over the long term? My answer is, if we're looking at the current ways that the CBN is going about stabilizing the effect, it is not something that is going to be long-lived. So we should start to move gradually towards productive capital and not rely on capital flows here locally. We are putting ourselves out there through the meetings and the conferences and the engagement that presidents and other stakeholders are having. So it is a combination of all these in place that will definitely see us through in terms of a broader economic growth and development.
An interesting one, Nabila. I think it's a good way to live it this Monday afternoon. I must thank you so much for joining us on the program. Nabila Mohammed is an investment analyst with Chapel Hill Denham. Thank you so much, and have a great September as always.
Thank you for having me.
All right then.